I grew up in a family that, from the outside, looked like the picture of perfection. We lived in a grand mansion in one of the city's most affluent neighborhoods, where tree-lined streets led to sprawling estates, with gleaming black iron gates, and flawlessly manicured lawns. Our house had everything: a large swimming pool in the backyard, a private movie theater, and a garage big enough to fit all three of my father's luxury cars. My father, Andrew Callahan, was a highly successful entrepreneur, who built his company from scratch and turned it into a leading firm in the financial investment sector. He was the kind of man people admired: intelligent, decisive, and incredibly driven. My mother, Evelyn, was different. She never had to work and was fully content enjoying the wealth my father provided. Appearances mattered more than anything to her. She was always dressed in the latest designer outfits, carrying limited edition handbags she felt she had to own, especially if the women in her social circle had them too. I could count on one hand the number of times my mother truly spent quality time with me, without being glued to her phone or distracted by conversations with her friends. My father loved me, but he was always busy with work. Growing up, I spent most of my time with a rotating series of nannies, each one leaving almost as quickly as they came. My mother was never satisfied, always finding some reason to let them go. There was only one person I really bonded with: Linda. She wasn't just a caretaker, she felt like real family. Linda read me bedtime stories, taught me how to bake cookies on weekends, and most importantly, she listened. Whenever my parents were too busy or uninterested, Linda was there, holding me close and reminding me that I was special and deserving of love, just like any other child. But that comfort didn't last. One day, when I was 8, I walked into the living room and saw my mother standing with her arms crossed, staring coldly at Linda. "I can't accept this," my mother said icily. "I saw you wearing a Cartier bracelet in the kitchen this morning. Staff shouldn't wear things like that." Linda hesitated before replying, "Mrs. Callahan, it was a birthday gift from my mother." "Really? Or did you take it from somewhere?" my mother replied, tilting her head and narrowing her eyes in suspicion. "I won't tolerate behavior like this in my home." I froze. I knew Linda would never do something like that, but it didn't matter. My mother had already made up her mind. The next morning, Linda was gone. No goodbye. I stood by the window watching her walk to her car, feeling an emptiness settle deep inside me. As the years went by, I got used to not having anyone around who genuinely cared, except for my father, though even he was increasingly consumed by work. I learned not to expect anything from my mother. Every time I tried to get her attention, she would smile politely, then change the subject to her latest outfit or an upcoming social event. Then everything changed when I was 14. I remember that night vividly. My father came home later than usual, looking exhausted, but still managing a smile as he walked through the door. I had noticed the dark circles under his eyes growing more pronounced over the past few weeks. He had been working non-stop on an important deal, doing everything he could to make sure it succeeded. "Sweetheart, did you finish your homework?" he asked as he passed through the living room, where I was curled up on the couch. "Yes," I nodded. "Did you?" he asked with a tired smile. "I will. What about you?" "I'll grab something later. Just need to finish up a few things first." But he never got the chance. That night, the sudden ring of the phone pierced through the silence of our large house. I heard my mother scream from the living room. I rushed downstairs and found her clutching the phone, hands shaking. No, this can't be happening," she stammered, before letting out a cry that echoed through the house. It felt like a nightmare. My father had collapsed at the office, a sudden medical emergency. By the time help arrived, it was too late. He was gone. The funeral passed in a blur, solemn faces and hushed condolences. I stood beside my mother, listening to her weep for the guests, but I saw something else in her eyes, not the grief of someone who lost a partner, but the fear of losing the luxurious lifestyle she had become so used to. And that fear quickly became reality. My mother decided to take over my father's company, convinced she could run it as a capable businesswoman. I couldn't believe it when she confidently told the senior staff, "Women have a better instinct for business than men." Within 6 months, everything began to fall apart. The experienced financial directors who had worked under my father started resigning, profits dropped, investments failed, but my mother continued spending as if nothing had changed, clinging to the life we once had. Eventually, the company plunged into financial crisis, debts piled up, shareholder confidence disappeared. In the end, the company had to be sold, at just a fraction of its true value. We lost everything. The mansion, Once my mother's pride was seized by the bank to cover the debt, I stood on the lawn, watching moving trucks haul away the last pieces of luxury furniture, feeling like pieces of my life were being taken away with them. We moved into a small house in the suburbs. My mother couldn't accept that she was no longer part of high society, but for me, the worst was yet to come. I packed my bags and left right after high school graduation. I had applied to several universities, but deep down, I knew I'd choose the one farthest from my mother. I needed a new life, one free from her manipulation, her constant complaints, and those subtle passive-aggressive remarks about my responsibilities toward her. When I got accepted to Crestview University, a prestigious school in another state, more than a 2-hour flight from home, I knew I was leaving for good. I didn't tell my mother until everything was already arranged. When I finally did, she looked at me as if I had just announced something outrageous. "You're just going to leave me, all alone?" she asked, her voice sharper than usual. "I'm not leaving you, Mom. I'm going to college," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "You could study somewhere nearby. Do you really have to run away like this?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, yes, I did need to run. I needed to escape her shadow and start over. During my 4 years in college, she never once called me first. Every time we spoke it was because I reached out, and each time, her tone was the same, either filled with complaints or guilt trips about how I was neglecting her. "I have to pay all the bills by myself now," she sighed once during one of our rare phone calls. "There's no one to help me anymore." I stayed silent. I knew she still received Social Security, and had savings from the sale of the mansion, but for my mother, money was never enough. I tried to ignore the guilt and focused on what mattered. I had worked too hard to let this opportunity go to waste. I threw myself into my finance major, determined to build a future for myself that was nothing like the one I came from. After 4 intense years, I graduated with honor. Just weeks later, I received a job offer from one of the most respected financial firms in the region. It came with a dream salary, and the kind of opportunities I had only dreamed of as a child. Once I had settled into my new job and started earning, I began to think about my mother. I knew she would never appreciate anything I did, but still, I felt a sense of responsibility. I decided to send her a fixed amount each month, 1,100, enough to comfortably cover her basic needs. On top of that, I covered several of her larger bills to make sure she lived stably. At first, she said nothing. She simply accepted the money. But over time, something shifted. Her phone calls became less accusatory. She started inviting me out to dinner when I visited. We began going to small, cozy restaurants, places she never would have stepped into back when we were. For the first time in years, it felt like we could actually talk. Without the pressure of wealth and appearances, we seemed to connect on a more human level. I began to believe she had finally accepted our new reality. I was wrong. Her 55th birthday arrived without a formal invitation, just a short text. "Are you free Saturday night? I want to have a small dinner." I smiled when I read it. It was rare for her to keep things simple, and while she still wasn't the type to say thank you, I appreciated that she wasn't making any unreasonable demand. But that Saturday night, as I stepped out of my car at the address she had sent, my heart sank. In front of me stood one of the most extravagant restaurants in the city. Crystal chandeliers glittered in the windows. Uniformed staff greeted guests at the door. Luxury cars filled the valet parking lot. I walked in, a heavy feeling settling in my stomach. When the host led me to the private dining area, I stopped in my tracks. At least 30 people were seated around elaborately decorated tables, not just family, but my mother's old friends and acquaintances, people I had never even met. Everyone was laughing, sipping expensive wine, enjoying the lavish atmosphere. Then I saw her, my mother. She walked toward me with arms wide open, her face glowing. "Jenna, I'm so happy you're here." I stood frozen, my breath tightening in my chest. "Mom, what is this?" She looked at me like the answer was obvious. "My birthday party," she said cheerfully. I glanced around. Lavish dishes were being served, and bottles of high-end wine sparkled under the chandeliers, but all I could think about was the bill. "I booked everything in advance," my mother continued, beaming. "You don't have to worry about a thing, just enjoy." A cold chill crept down my spine. "Did you tell me about this?" Her smile faltered. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. "Jenna, don't make a big deal out of this. You're my daughter. You always pay for our dinners. What's the difference?" I stared at her for a long time, and for the first time, I truly saw her. Not the woman I had hoped she might become, but the one she had always been. She hadn't changed at all. Even after losing everything, she still believed I owed her, that my money was hers. I took a deep breath, reached into my purse, and pulled out 200. I set it on the table. This is my share, I said, my voice steady and cold. The rest is on you. The room went quiet. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. All eyes turned toward us, curious and confused. My mother's expression twisted into disbelief. Jenna, what are you saying? I'm not paying for this dinner, I said clearly. If you wanted to throw an extravagant party, you should have told me. You can't just assume. I'll cover everything. She stood still, speechless. Then her face darkened. You are so ungrateful, she snapped, her voice rising. After everything I've done for you. But I didn't respond. I turned around and walked out of the room, leaving behind the murmurs, the whispers, and the weight of every unspoken expectation. This time, I wasn't coming back. I returned to my hotel, locked the door behind me, and collapsed onto the bed. I didn't bother turning on the lights. Only the city glowed beyond the window, towering buildings sparkling under the night sky, as if they were whispering to me about the decision I was about to make. I picked up my phone and started typing, the first steps toward reclaiming my life. First, I opened my banking app, and canceled the automatic $1,000 monthly transfer to my mother. When the confirmation screen appeared, I felt a weight lift off my chest. Next, I called the dealership, the one where I had bought her a Lexus 2 years ago. Hello, this is Jenna Callahan, I said. I need to reclaim a vehicle that's under my name. Can I arrange a tow truck for pickup within 20? Of course, Miss Callahan, the employee said professionally. We'll send someone first thing in the morning. Then I opened my browser, logged into the internet provider's site, and canceled the high-speed service she'd been enjoying at my expense for the past 2 years. Finally, I opened my social media app, and typed a short, firm message. Important announcement. As of today, I will no longer be providing financial support of any kind to my mother or any other family members. All previous arrangements have been terminated. Please do not contact me, requesting money. I stared at the words, then hit post. My phone buzzed almost instantly. Before I could even read the first comment, I turned it off, tossed it aside, and curled up beneath the clean hotel sheets. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, when I finally turned my phone back on, a storm had erupted in my inbox. Over 20 messages from my mother. The first ones were pure rage. What the hell are you doing? Do you know how humiliated I was last night? Who do you think you are? How dare you cut me off? Who gave you the right? Then, just as I expected, the anger morphed into guilt. You're leaving me to starve. Do you even understand how much I sacrificed for you? When I didn't respond, her tone changed again, this time to desperation. Jenna, please, just one more month, just $500. That's all I'm asking. I locked my phone, tossed it into my bag, and left the hotel without hesitation. In the days that followed, the backlash came swiftly. Relatives messaged and called me relentlessly. Aunt Karen texted, Jenna, do you really think you can treat your mother like this? She raised you, and this is how you repay her. Uncle Mark called, his voice heavy with judgment. Your father would be ashamed of you. I thought you were better than this. Not a single one of them asked how I was doing. No one cared about the years of manipulation, the guilt, the relentless financial pressure I had endured. They didn't see me, they only saw the money, so I blocked them all. And just like that, my life changed. Without the fixed monthly payments draining my account, I tasted financial freedom for the first time in years. I moved into a beautiful apartment closer to the city center, a place that felt like mine. I booked a flight to Europe, alone. For the first time, I wandered unfamiliar streets without a single message, asking for rent, bills, or a little help. 2 months later, my mother tried to reach me again, this time using a neighbor's phone. When I answered, her voice was the same, but something about it was different, slightly thinner, more cautious. Jenna, I miss you, she said like nothing had happened. I'm sorry about the birthday party. I got carried away. I didn't think it through. I stayed silent. The apology didn't feel real, and then came the truth. Can you help me out, just this once, this month's rent? I promise I won't ask again. And that was it. That was the moment I knew, she hadn't changed at all. I took a deep breath. Mom, I can't help you anymore. You have to take care of yourself. Her voice instantly turned sharp. Jenna, you can't treat your mother this way. I am your mother. I paused, and then replied with a clarity I didn't know I had in me. Then start acting like one, and I hung up. No guilt, no regret. From that day on, I never heard from her again. Through friends or the occasional social media post, I found out she had moved into a smaller apartment. She told anyone who would listen that I was ungrateful, that I had abandoned her after all she had done for me. But the irony, none of those people who criticized me offered to help her. Not one. They were quick to judge, but never quick to reach for their own wallets. I didn't care anymore. I poured my energy into work, built my career, surrounded myself with people who truly valued me, not for my money, but for. Sometimes on quiet nights, I still thought about my mother, not because I missed her, but because I missed the mother I never had, the kind who would love without conditions, the kind who would support without strings, the kind who didn't see love as a transaction. But that mother never existed, and I stopped waiting for her to show up. Maybe if my real mother ever truly understood what she had done, maybe then, I'd reconsider. But one thing I knew for certain, I would never go back to being my family's ATM again. That chapter of my life was closed, and I had never felt freer. Years passed, life had changed, quieter, calmer, truly mine. I had learned to take care of myself, without feeling guilty for not meeting someone else's expectations. Sometimes when I passed shop windows filled with gifts, or heard laughter coming from restaurants, I thought of that birthday dinner, her voice filled with blame, the judging stares, the weight of years of silent resentment. But now it no longer hurt. It was just a memory, like an old scar. You know where it once was, but it no longer aches. There were no more late-night calls, no more desperate texts, asking for help, no more waking up in a panic, calculating how much money I had left before the next transfer. My bank account belonged to me now, so did my peace. In the time that followed, I found new friends, built my own business, and most importantly, I allowed myself joy, small ones, like buying a cake for no reason, big ones, like booking a solo trip to Iceland, just because I wanted to. Every now and then, someone would message me after hearing the story calling me selfish, heartless, but there were others who thanked me. They shared their own experiences with parents, or relatives who used love as leverage. It was in those messages that I realized I was far from alone. So many of us had been taught that love meant sacrifice, but only from our side. We had learned to protect ourselves, from the very people who were supposed to protect us. Maybe someday I'll see my mother again, maybe in a random cafe, or crossing the street, but I won't flinch. I'm no longer the frightened daughter, worried about her approval. I'm a grown woman who chose herself, and I'm proud of that choice. Junna's story isn't just her own, it reflects a reality many people live, those who are used, manipulated, and drained by the very people meant to love them. It reminds us that love isn't a debt, and support isn't an obligation tied to blood. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, sometimes it's the only way to survive. What did you think of Jenna's story? Have you ever experienced something similar, or known someone who? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more real stories about family, healing, and finding your own path.